Friends, gather round because things are about to get terrifying. We're talking about Trump's trade war with China, a saga more convoluted than a season of The Bachelor after the producers found a crate of Red Bull. Remember all those tariffs Trump slapped on Chinese goods? Well, buckle up because he then decided to exempt certain electronics like phones and chips. Or did he? It's more complicated than a Trump tax return. Let's dive in. In early April 2025, Trump, in his infinite wisdom, decided to escalate the trade war by jacking up tariffs on Chinese imports. We're talking a whopping increase from 54% to 145%. That's like going from a gentle spring rain to a full-on monsoon of taxes on goods. Naturally, this sent shockwaves through the global economy. Businesses panicked, investors lost their minds. It was chaos, just the way Trump likes it. But wait, there's a twist. Just when everyone thought the trade war couldn't get any messier, Trump announced exemptions for some electronics, including our beloved smartphones, computers, and those tiny chips that make the digital world go round. The exemptions were retroactive too, going back to April 5, 2025. For a moment it seemed like a reprieve, a tiny ray of sunshine in the tariff storm. But was it really? Hold your horses, folks, because here comes the real kicker. Just when everyone thought they had a handle on the situation, the plot thickened. The initial relief that came with the announcement of exemptions was short-lived. People were caught off guard, and the atmosphere was thick with confusion and disbelief. Turns out those exemptions weren't as generous as they seemed. Business people, who had initially breathed a sigh of relief, were now back to square one, scrutinizing the fine print of the tariff documents. The realization dawned that the exemptions were riddled with caveats and conditions that made them almost meaningless. The sense of disappointment was palpable as they tried to navigate the complex web of regulations. Trump, in his signature move, clarified that these electronics weren't entirely off the hook. In a press conference filled with his usual flair, he made it clear that while some products might escape the initial round of tariffs, they wouldn't be free from scrutiny for long. His announcement was a stark reminder that the trade war was far from over, and the tech industry was still very much in the crosshairs. Instead, they'd be subject to a brand new tariff, the creatively named Semiconductor Tariff. This new tariff was specifically designed to target the semiconductor industry, a critical component of modern electronics. The name might not have been the most imaginative, but its implications were far-reaching. The semiconductor tariff was poised to shake up the industry, affecting everything from consumer electronics to advanced computing systems. This new tariff, separate from the global tariffs imposed earlier, targets the very heart of the tech industry. Semiconductor chips are the building blocks of modern technology, and any disruption in their supply chain could have cascading effects across various sectors. From smartphones to data centers, the impact of this tariff would be felt far and wide. Tech industry workers and companies were now faced with the daunting task of reassessing their strategies and supply chains to mitigate the effects of this new policy. Trump, never one to miss an opportunity for drama, also announced a national security tariff investigation into semiconductors and the electronics supply chain. This investigation was framed as a matter of national security, adding another layer of complexity to an already convoluted situation. Government officials were now tasked with examining the potential risks and vulnerabilities in the semiconductor supply chain, further heightening the sense of uncertainty in the industry. Because, nothing screams national security like a tariff on your iPhone. The idea that consumer electronics could be a national security concern seemed almost absurd, yet it underscored the far-reaching implications of the trade policies being enacted. As consumers, we often take for granted the complex supply chains that bring these devices to our hands. This new tariff and the accompanying investigation served as a stark reminder of the intricate and often fragile nature of global trade in the tech industry. Section 5. Justifying the Tango. Now you might be wondering, what's the rationale behind this tariff tango? It's a complex dance of economics and politics, with each step carefully choreographed to achieve specific goals. The Trump administration, in its infinite wisdom, claims it's all about encouraging companies to move production back to the United States. They argue that by imposing tariffs on imported goods, they can make it more expensive for companies to manufacture products overseas and then ship them back to the US. This, in theory, should incentivize companies to set up shop within American borders, thereby creating jobs and boosting the domestic economy. Well, the Trump administration, in its infinite wisdom, claims it's all about encouraging companies to move production back to the United States. They say it's about bringing back jobs, boosting domestic manufacturing, and making America great again. The idea is that by making it more costly to import goods, domestic production will become more attractive. This, in turn, is supposed to lead to a renaissance in American manufacturing, with factories buzzing and workers thriving. They say it's about bringing back jobs, boosting domestic manufacturing, and making America great again. The administration envisions a scenario where American workers are back in the factories, producing goods that proudly bear the "Made in America" label. This vision is deeply rooted in a sense of national pride and economic independence. It's a nostalgic nod to a bygone era when American manufacturing was at its peak, and the country was seen as an industrial powerhouse, and making America great again. This slogan has become a rallying cry for many, symbolizing a desire to return to a time when the American economy was robust and self-sufficient. It's a powerful message that resonates with a significant portion of the population, particularly those who feel left behind by globalization and the shifting tides of the global economy. The promise of a revitalized manufacturing sector is seen as a beacon of hope for these individuals. Of course, they conveniently ignore the fact that tariffs often lead to higher prices for consumers and businesses. When tariffs are imposed on imported goods, the cost of these goods typically rises. This increase is often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. So, while the goal may be to protect American jobs and industries, the reality is that consumers end up paying more for everyday items. This can be particularly burdensome for low-income families who are already struggling to make ends meet. But hey, who needs affordable electronics when you can have national pride, right? It's a trade-off that the administration seems willing to make, betting that the long-term benefits of a stronger domestic economy will outweigh the short-term pain of higher prices. However, this is a contentious issue, with many economists arguing that the negative impacts on consumers and businesses could outweigh the potential gains. In the end, the success of this strategy will depend on a delicate balance of economic factors and the ability to navigate the complex landscape of global trade. Section 6. China's Countermove. China, understandably, wasn't too thrilled about this whole tariff charade. They called for a complete cancellation of the tariffs and a return to, basic respect in international trade. They saw the exemptions as a small step in the right direction, but not nearly enough to offset the damage already done. The Chinese government, never one to back down from a fight, hinted at potential retaliatory measures. Section 7. Market Jitters. The financial world has always been a place of uncertainty and rapid changes, but recent events have taken this to a whole new level. As you can imagine, this tariff roller coaster had the stock market in a tizzy. Investors were on edge, trying to make sense of the conflicting signals coming from global trade negotiations. The constant back and forth left many unsure of where to put their money, leading to wild swings in stock prices. Initial news of the exemptions caused a brief surge in European stocks, as investors hoped that the worst might be over. For a moment, it seemed like the markets might stabilize. European companies, particularly those in the manufacturing sector, saw a temporary boost in their stock prices. But the earlier tariff announcements had already done their damage. The uncertainty had already seeped into the market, causing a ripple effect that was hard to reverse. Financial analysts were left scrambling to adjust their forecasts, and many investors decided to pull out, fearing further losses. Apple, the tech giant that relies heavily on Chinese manufacturing, lost a staggering $640 billion in market value. This was a significant blow not just to Apple but to the tech sector as a whole. The company's reliance on global supply chains made it particularly vulnerable to the trade war's impacts. The S&P 500, a key indicator of the US stock market, took a nosedive, dropping more than 5%. This decline reflected the broader market's fears and uncertainties. Investors were left wondering how long the turmoil would last and what the long-term impacts might be. The market jitters were a stark reminder of how interconnected and fragile the global economy can be. Section 8. The Tariff Scorecard. So, where do we stand now? Well, the tariff situation on Chinese electronics is about as clear as mud. While some products got a temporary reprieve from the 125% tariff and the additional 10% global tariff, the 20% baseline tariff on all Chinese goods is still in effect. And let's not forget those pesky Biden-era tariffs, including a 50% duty on Chinese semiconductors, are still looming large. Section 9. The uncertain future. As for the future of US-China trade relations, well, your guess is as good as mine. The trade war rumbles on with no clear end in sight. The two economic giants seem locked in a stalemate, each side waiting for the other to blink first. One thing's for sure, this tariff tango is far from over.